everyone had a good understanding of, number one, what they're doing, but also how you can approach doing it, and then how that leads you to maybe learning more about harmony. So this week, it's the first assignment that we've done where we don't give you every single note to play. There's some notation at the beginning, but then what happens is this, there's chord changes, and you need to complete the harmony based on the chord changes, and we've given you the top note. So if the chord says B minor, and the note that you read on the treble clef for the right hand is a B, then you need to add F sharp and D underneath it. So you're completing the harmony throughout the exercise. Like I said, we filled in the first measure, or first two measures, just so you could see what it is we're looking for, but then you have to actually figure out what the notes are. And they're presented in the lesson, but I wanted to kind of expand a little bit on that theory of figuring out chords and how I would look on doing it and what I think the easiest way is. So if you have questions as I'm going along, definitely, feel free to pipe up and ask them. And for a lot of people, it might just be a review of what you already know. But either way, I think it's good because you're going to have to start doing more and more chords in the course, and we're going to start to transition to where you're going to be reading chord symbols and then figuring out what the notes are, like we do this week. The left hand, you're going to play the whole thing exactly the way it's written. And it's not too bad. The left hand is only quarter notes, but the challenge is also that there's a syncopated rhythm in the right hand. So as you're working up the coordination, remember that the right hand is this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But the left hand is straight quarter notes. So you get that 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And it's that and 3, 4. It's a little bit tricky to get. And we're also using swing rhythms with the backing track and the feel of this. So be careful with those particular rhythms. So, all right, I'm going to maybe do my bad iPad trick, see if I can get a little visual to go along with what I'm trying. See if I can get this to work. It says I'm sending, all right. See how long my left arm holds up here. So in terms of figuring out chords, I think the best way to do it is to have a basic understanding of how to create a major scale, and then create the chord based on what you know about the notes in the major scale. So really short version of this would be, okay, so a major scale, you take any starting note, and then there's a formula of movement. And the formula is simple. So if I take D as a starting note, I have to move up a whole step, and the whole step is 2 half steps, right? So it's 2 consecutive notes. And then another whole step, and then a half step, and then a whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a half step. So this is the scale that is, recognized as a major scale. It's the do, a deer, a female deer song, if you're familiar with it. So it has do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, and it's obviously used in a lot of ways, melodies, harmony based upon it. And it's really, I think it's just called the major scale because it was the scale that was in most use at the time. You'd argue that maybe more music is in minor keys than out in major keys, but not necessarily, I guess. Maybe it's a kind of an even split. So with this major scale, we get a key signature, and you'll notice that we have D, E, and then F is sharp, and then G, A, B, C sharp, and D. And it's clear because we don't have any two of the same notes. So every scale that you create, if I can do it this way, tell me if you lose the visual, but any scale that you create, you can only have one of each note, meaning 1A, 1B, 1C. So from D to E, it makes sense this is F sharp and not G flat because we have a G. We can't have a G and a G flat. So that's where we get the key signature. Now, if I go back to C, that's the easy one because it's all the white keys on the keyboard. Now, when we're creating chords are built by skipping notes. So it's basically every other note. And as we play a scale, so it's a C major scale, we can label each note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is 8, the octave. So when someone says, what's the third of C, It's E because it's the third note of the scale. And what's the fifth? The fifth is G. So a major triad is based on the root, the third, and the fifth of a major scale. So C, E, G. If I go back up to D, when I have whole step, half step, whole step, I have root, 3, 5. So these notes, played in really any position, make up a D major triad. So then you've got two other positions that you can play a triad. You can play root position, meaning the root is the bottom note. But I can play these same notes if the root's on top, and we call that first inversion. And then if the third's on top, it's second inversion. So all of these triads are C, and that's back up to root position. And you can expand on that. I mean, even if I can play in an open position, still with the C triad, it's got the C, the E, and the G. It's just split apart. So it doesn't always have to be in a particular position, but the basic ones that we learn initially would be root position, first inversion, second inversion. And to make a triad minor, you lower the third. So C minor triad would be here. Keep in mind that the third is the third of the scale. So even when I play the C major triad here, this is still the third. So C minor, and this is C minor. So this week you're going to be looking at playing some major chords and some minor chords, and you have to be really clear about it and understand that, okay, if it's E major, I can build the scale 1, there's the second, there's the third, fourth, there's the fifth note of the scale, there's an E major triad. If I want an E minor triad, I lower the third. And then I have different positions I can play it in. So we use the different positions so the movements from chord to chord can be smooth. So as a piano player, if I'm playing from C to F, instead of doing this all the time, you can move from here to here and back. Or if I'm in this position with C, I could do that from here. And we call it voice leading, and it makes sense. The voice leading, if you think about it, if you had 3 singers, and this is a C triad, and they had to sing a G triad, rather than have this person move, it makes sense they continue. And this person would move down to D, and then this person would move down to B. So each note in a chord I consider a voice, so it makes sense to voice lead like that. So most of the time, we're trying to go for the least amount of movement, kind of the efficient way of doing it. That's not always the case. Excuse me. Sometimes you might want to voice lead something based on a melodic line. So if you want it to sound a certain way, if you voice lead by moving up or by moving down, it's going to change. That top note usually sounds like a melody. So you might want to move it in such a way that you're moving just up or just down. But initially, as we're starting to learn how to do this, usually we're just trying to be very efficient, keep the chords in a good range, and just move as little as possible to go from chord to chord. There's a few other things that you might want to listen for as we continue through the course and we're doing all these chords, and that's also the relationship of the melody notes with the chord, and in particular the top note of the chord. So if the melody note, for example, what's a good example here? If it's C and the chord is, I'm trying to think of what would be, I think I might wait on this, because there's a couple examples in the course coming up, and I don't remember specifically what they are. But if you don't like the distance between the melody and the top note of the chord, you might choose a different inversion so they sound good. In jazz harmony, there's really obvious ones where you don't want a half step between them, and you don't want a tritone usually between them because they're very dissonant. We listen to things like that. There's pretty much no real wrong answers in terms of the inversion for the exercises that we do a little later on, but you might find you like one better than the other simply because of the way the voice leading moves and its relationship with the melody note. But for this week, we're being very specific, and you need to play the inversions exactly the way we label it. So we give you that top note, and you're adding the two notes underneath to complete the harmony. I think I'm out of breath. So from that, any questions on anything or anything else I can go over that's related to that?
Well, you said majors and minor chords. I thought these were all minors.
Yes, I'm trying to think.
In the assignment.
In the
I'm sorry,
assignment.
in the assignment. Is that correct?
I got to go back to Safari and just before I say yes, which I think that.
At first glance, it looks to me like they're all major.
Did I lose you guys?
No.
Oh, I was just talking. Did you hear what I was saying?
No.
Okay, my iPad didn't like me looking at the chords. Yeah, they're all minor triads. I just wanted to double check so I didn't say anything stupid. And you would still, I think it's still good to understand, starting from the major scale and finding the third and understanding that you're lowering the third a half step as you develop, where E minor is and B minor. There's kind of two things that happen. I think it's good to know the theory, but ultimately, too, you also start to memorize the shape and you get used to what, the B minor looks like. And so the next time you see a B minor chord symbol, you'll recognize it from the other tune that you played or an E minor. So they become memorized based on the visual look and also the sound of what they sound like. But as you get more and more advanced, you'll also start to see that one chord can function as a bunch of other chords. So because of that, you also want to understand the theory of where it came from, because all of these chords could be something totally different depending on what the bass note is and what else is going on around them.
Okay. So I have one other question.
Sure.
Could you, since I seem to have a chronic problem of eighth note upbeat, keep missing it, could you just play the first couple of measures of today's assignment?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it from memory because it seems, hopefully I think I remember the first two measures anyway. Because if I go back, it seems like I lose you guys on the chat. So the left hand is straight quarter notes. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the right hand has the dotted quarter eighth note and then tied to the half note. So that one is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So if I put them together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 4. So that's the after beat 2, that and then hitting the downbeat. So very slowly, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's the rhythm. And that repeats pretty much throughout the whole thing.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And those are things, too, that, if that's troublesome, I always try to kind of back it out to the smallest common denominator. And sometimes it's helpful to just think of 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and just play two notes until you get a sense of how the arms drop together and where they drop at different points. And then add the notes in that you're trying to play afterwards.
Okay.
All right, other stuff, anything else?
Well, I'm fine.
In the baseline, measure 4,
Okay,
would you play the E natural with your fourth finger and then just jump your hand down? Or would you put your thumb under, F sharp with, let's say, a third finger, then thumb under on E, and then continue?
I probably would just move my whole arm down,
Okay.
but I think either approach would be okay. Let me, I hope I don't, I may lose you again for a second. I wanna go take a peek and just make sure I'm, again, remembering it correctly. Hold on. If I can do this. Oh, actually, it sounds like I'm keeping it, so that's good. Yeah, I think, I guess efficiently, it probably makes sense to go thumb on the A, 2, 3, and then thumb on the E. And then you're replacing the thumb with the fifth finger. I would recommend that. I think 4, 1, 2, 3, thumb, and then 5. It makes it much easier to get down to the G as I'm looking at it.
Okay, what about the, what about eighth measure?
Yeah, I know. You could do the same movement with the thumb and then keep the hand a little more closed and then go to the 5. Yeah, I think those are also, I guess, tricky spots, especially that eighth one. And I will kind of add the reminder that that D is different than the prior 2 times from the first line where you end up on an E. And we'll definitely get some posts where people play E's instead of T's in Measure 8.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess that makes the most sense. I think I'm comfortable enough jumping, the distances feel okay to me. But as you're developing that sense, it might be easier if you use your thumb on both of these and D's and then get to the end.
Good question.
Yeah, it's good I mean, it's always good to, first thing, figure out how you're gonna handle any place that feels like it's awkward, or feels like it's funny, and then once you've determined whatever it is you feel best about, just stick with it, and then, develop that muscle memory over the course of practicing it, and don't change, so you do get that consistency as you're practicing it. So, anything else about this lesson or any of the lessons, or maybe any particular comments or questions just in general about playing or anything to go over? Guess not.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Richard, did you have something you were thinking?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No,
Oh.
I think I'm good.
I'm done. I'm fine.
Okay.